Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. I'm Matt Wolff, founder and CEO of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Darrin Gray to the show. Welcome. How's everything going? I know we're gearing up for the big event next weekend, Fatherhood Festival. But tell everyone in the audience who you are, and then we'll get into it.
Hey friends, my name's Darrin Gray, and I've been working in sports, media, and missions for a long time. And so I am pleased to just be helping to guide a festival forward with the help of a leader named Justin Batt, who is a remarkable leader in the fatherhood industry, and just bringing forward the notion of what it means to be a better father, a real man, a person of substance. And there's a big project that's happening at the Pro Football Hall of Fame Village. The Hall of Fame Village is in Canton, Ohio, and it's called Fatherhood Festival. It's going to be a great time to come together with family and friends to connect and to learn and to grow. So that's Father's Day weekend, June 17, 18, 19. It's open to the public and something that we'd love you to learn more about. You can go on Ticketmaster.com and get a ticket. It's only $25 for adults, and children 12 and under are free.
Yeah, we got a screening of the Kurt Warner movie, American Underdog, which I haven't seen. I heard very good things about. We got a Jordan Davis concert on Saturday and a special brunch with Anthony Munoz on Sunday. Definitely, we're going to talk a lot more about that. But I want to get to the crux of why the Fatherhood Festival and who you are and what you do. Obviously, faith is such a big part of your life. Tell us why and how did that become?
Well, you've got that right. I am a missionary at an organization called Athletes in Action. And while on the surface of things, people may not fully understand all of that, my job, my mission field is generally pro sports. I do lots of work with NFL players, coaches, and alumni, helping to guide them from a spiritual and a social perspective. In fact, Matt, I'm just back from Israel just a few weeks ago, where I took over a cohort of NFL leaders, many of them still playing in the league, and helped to guide them on a spiritual journey where they could learn and understand who Jesus was. So I'm a Jesus follower and proud to be able to do this work in and around pro sports. But Athletes in Action has been doing work in pro sports for many decades now. It's a division of Cru, that's Campus Crusade for Christ, and it's so fun to be linked up with others, many thousands of missionaries across the world working together to do that. So as a missionary, one of the voids that I saw in the marketplace was the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and being able to use fatherhood as the bridge. There's a verse, the last verse in the Old Testament, it's Malachi 4:6, and it says that one day a prophet will come that will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. And if that doesn't happen, there will be hell to pay. And that's the message version. But the idea is we look around our culture and we see some of the issues associated with having families that are broken, not having fathers that are as engaged as they should be, both in a suburban context where dad may be over busy and not engaged, or in other contexts where dad's just literally not involved. And so what we want to do is use fatherhood as a way to connect with the hearts of fathers and to encourage them to do their most important earthly job. And so that's something that I've been doing a long time, having traveled the country with retired NFL head coach Tony Dungy to help produce a strategy that we call All Pro Dad. And that aspirational heart of a man strategy has been functioning with over 1,000 chapters in schools across America and millions of followers that follow along with Tony and the dozens and dozens of other NFL players, coaches, and alumni that speak out about what it means to be a man of substance, a real man, a father. So it's an honor to do the work we do. The work will never be done. And I'm just proud to play a small role in the fatherhood movement. And as a missionary at Athletes in Action, it's a blessing to be able to do it.
Are you a parent yourself?
I am. In fact, I've got one upstairs, my 19-year-old son, who just got back from working on an internship for 98 days at a free range, off grid organic goat farm in New Mexico. You can't make that stuff up. And the funny thing about it, he learned how to herd goats, care for goats, slaughter goats, And that's what he wanted to grow and do and learn, because he didn't want to go directly from high school to college, even though he easily could have. And Zachary is his name, is an awesome young kid. In fact, he'll be with me at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, as I live out being a father in that context at the Hall. But Zachary needed a non-traditional path. So as a dad, I wanted to be able to provide that sort of pathway for him. But I also have a daughter who's a senior at IU. Her name is Shelby. She's never had a B before. So from elementary forward. And so I say that to say that's a distinctive about Shelby, but it also is not necessarily me putting pressure on her to live to a certain standard. That's her. So it's been a topic of conversation here of late, like, releasing her from that pressure as a dad, to know that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the perfect daughter. So that's my Shelby. My oldest son, Evan, was just here for lunch a few minutes ago. He came over to get some stuff. We're in the process of moving. He lives here in Indianapolis, where I'm from. That's Evan Spencer Gray. He's 24. He's a banker, and he's getting ready to get married to the love of his life, Gabby, who we so love. And so we're thrilled about that. And then I can't forget about Prince Majestic Michael Johnson. That's my godson. I picked him up in 4th grade when he started staying at my home. He was best friends with my oldest son, Evan, and Prince was over a lot, and he would stay some days for several days at a time. And it took me a few months to realize that he didn't really have a home to go home to. And in that, we began to do some co-parenting with his biological mom, who I love and am around, and she's in a picture, but found a way. And you know what? Prince just graduated from college. So he's now working in logistics and trucking business, and we are so proud of him, along with all our 3 biological children. And Prince. My wife is on the other side of that wall right there, out on the back porch, letting me do what I do. That's Leslie, and we've got a great life. And we've been married 28 years, and we're not perfect, but we serve a perfect God that helps us to do the best that we can to be the parents that we're called to be.
Yeah, a lot of congratulations in order, wedding and
Mm-hmm.
graduating college, and it sounds like they're on the right path. Speaking of that, Brent made a good points about the importance of father. I would say just parental guidance, because there are, for whatever reason, people who don't have a father, whether they left or they were never in the picture. My father passed, so there's a lot of. But I think we're focusing on fatherhood, but being a parent, and it's so difficult. I don't have kids, but I'm one of 3. My brother's got 4. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
uncle, and just seeing everything that's going on in society. At what point is it not your responsibility? Like, you've done what you can do, and then it's sort of up to an adult to be a good human being and do the right thing. Obviously, if you're a part of their life, you want to continue to guide them, but at some point, they are adults for a reason. How does that work in your eyes?
Well, when we crafted the top 10 ways to be an all-pro dad with Tony Dungy many decades ago, the 10th way was to be a father forever. And being a father changes, and realize that we don't all have biological fathers. There aren't all intact families. Your father passed early. I'm so sorry to hear that. My mom recently passed, and it's really hard. And so the truth of the matter is that the research indicates that when young people have 3 caring adults in their lives, that child's likelihood of ending up in a good place is much, much higher. And this idea that, hey, isn't it great if it's men and women that are helping to raise up a young person? And I think for me, it's not just a matter of raising my own children, but it's how do I raise my neighbor's children? The question becomes, who are my neighbors? Do I know my neighbors? Am I connected in their lives? And that's the biblical mandate to reach, or for me, to reach out and to connect with other people and try to be a man of substance and a mentor and a role model in the community, which I don't do perfectly. But what we do know is that if we can help adults to take it seriously, to be the people that they're called to be, so that they can lead the next generation, both in their own family and in the community, the world ends up being a far better place. And it's something that I aspire to do and inspire people to do.
Yeah. What do you struggle with? You talk about not perfectly. What do you struggle with?
Well, I gave you the example of my daughter, like this idea that somehow she's grown up with this notion that she needs to be always getting an A. And like, I don't remember translating that to her. My partner Justin talks a lot about being things are caught, not taught. So I have to examine myself. Like, did I somehow translate that message to her? Like, you need to be exceptional all the time? Because I know that it's impossible to live up to that standard. We're not all perfect all the time. Like, we're gonna make mistakes. And so I was with her this weekend. She came home from Indiana University and we spent time together just talking about what that means and trying to relieve that pressure valve to say you don't have to be perfect. She's got a really tough class coming up. This is her final semester in college coming up at her. She's going to graduate a semester early, but she'll be, this is the first semester of her senior year, and she'll graduate. And she's had one class that she said, Dad, I don't know if I can get an A in that class. I'm like, baby, you don't have to. And it doesn't really so much matter. So I tell you that as an example, real life example, as small as it might sound, like how is it that we give ourselves some grace? How do we? And I'm probably as hard on myself as anyone else. I get frustrated. I want things to be, I want to play to a standard. I want to be a high level operator and do things in a certain way.
Nope. We lost the feed for a
I know.
second. There you go.
Yeah, somebody was ringing in. So anyway, I know that I need to continue to give my own self some grace, as well as those around me, to make sure that we're in a position not to have to be perfect all the time. So I'll leave you that as sort of a quirky answer to your question of what are the imperfections in my life. The imperfection is wanting to be perfect because I think there's a little streak of that in me that I probably inadvertently taught to my daughter, and she's carrying it forward. So how do we release ourselves from that? So you get my point. Back
Yeah.
at you, Coach.
What? um, we both probably align on values and morals. I'm Jewish. I know you. And you started talking about,
Yeah.
Jesus was Jewish and all that, and I get it. But we come from different belief systems to try and be good people, and serve a purpose. So, but there's no real playbook in the overall world because we all believe in different things. Some believe in God, some don't. I'm very reform in in being Jewish. My belief is that it's more of a race and a culture for me, and just pride, and that's my family, and so,
Interesting.
that's a whole nother conversation. But how does everyone come together to kind of work, and it's not like I'm following this and you're following that. I mean, there's just things that seem to be right and wrong,
Mm.
and it's hard for people to kind of know, like, how do we guide people?
Yeah, I think it's by valuing and celebrating differences. And I'll answer it this way. So I'm going to put up a photograph. And not everybody can see that, but that's a photograph of Tony Dungy in the locker room right after he won the world championship in February 4th of 2007, which was the '06 Super Bowl season, which was one season following the most tragic event in Tony's life with loss of a son. And so it was very, talked about. He began talking about his faith very publicly because that's the thing that he clung to in his faith was Judeo-Christian, but specifically as a Jesus follower. But not everybody, even though every single person in that room is kneeling down, they're not all Christians. And so they didn't have to, they valued Tony, who he was, how they got there, even though they weren't all saying by us kneeling, oh, we all believe in Jesus Christ. So this idea is we can value each other, we can celebrate our leaders, we can connect with our calling, and I believe that it's something that we've got to make sure that we care for people really, really well. I say it this way: ministry moves best at the speed of relationship. And so I'm just back from Israel, and I was with a lot of Jewish men and women. One of my good friends is the rabbi of the American Football League in Israel. I should introduce you to him for a future podcast. His name is Rabbi Betzel. And oddly, I don't know if you've met Rabbi, but he's a remarkable man. He teaches me much, even though I might disagree with him on a couple of theological matters. Like, we have so much in common, and he's amazing. But he's not a cultural Jew, as you sort of described yourself, more from a heritage perspective. Like, he believes in all the ways, and he practices the 663 laws that it takes to be a practicing Hasidic Jew.
Yeah.
And so I think it's remarkable. Like, teach me about those 663 laws. And it's interesting. I might judge them and go, like, why do you have to do it that way? You can't eat shellfish, or you can't do certain things on Sunday. He's like, well, sure. But there's a lot of really practical things, like, don't, don't marry your sister. Like, that's one of the laws. And it's like, just makes sense. And so he's like, a lot of these things are just a way for us to create a cultural value, or for his case, a religious operating system around which he can organize. My religious operating system, I believe, is easier. Love God, love others. That's the great commandment. So for me, I have it, but I don't judge you because you don't operate by that same system. I value you. We do business together, right? We do stuff in the world. We love each other. And I want to continue to let my light shine, and I want you to let your light shine too. So I want to value your difference and know you as a man in the world and somebody that's living out your purpose and your values. So that's kind of how I would answer it. It's probably not the perfect answer, but it's how I'm wrestling with it right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because even within Judaism, like you said, Hasidic Jews and Orthodox Jews and
Mm,
Reform, and we all think very differently. I think that's why, for me, the cultural part of it and considering it a race is important to me. I don't. You ask me why, I don't know. It was instilled in me by my
mm,
parents, but I have family members who don't think it's as important as I might. And again, I'm not very religious by anyone's standards, but if you start looking around the world and the people I know, it's pretty religious. If you observe the holidays and you go to temple, even if it's 4 days a year, much more than the average person that I know. And that's, of course, talking about um, you know, being reform. But it is interesting because we can all get together and agree on things and support each other, whether that's what we believe in or not,
right?
which is the bottom line. I do want to talk about.
It's well said.
I want to talk about the Bible for a second, which is such a
Yeah,
huge part of your life.
let's go.
Uh, I've never read it. I hear scriptures all the time. I think
Mm,
some of it sounds great. I think some of it sounds a little bit out there for me personally. But what I want to hear from you is, it was written so long ago. Is not some of it open to interpretation based on the society and the world that we live in today?
wow, that's a heavy theological question. So in rabbinic tradition, remember that Jesus first was a rabbi. Okay. And I saw a study or an article a couple of weeks ago about how one particular leader articulated that he thought that Jesus might have been one of the 40 most influential rabbis of his time. Israel is a small place, but there were thousands of rabbis, and that Jesus would have been very well known. And then toward the end, he got super well known when things kind of started moving toward the culmination with the cross. But your question, Jewish leaders are constantly talking about reinterpreting the scripture. That's just how a rabbi does it. I think it's less so in some Christian circles, where there are some circles that feel that could somehow lead us astray if the Bible were reinterpreted. For me, I just think about layering the Bible and its truths, its deep truth, like the last shall be first and the first shall be last. That's a simple truism from the Bible. I don't know if you agree or don't agree. You don't have to, but that's a practice, a principle that I sort of look at and go, okay, that sort of needs to be true. Like, how do I make Prince, my godson, first, even though in the world's eyes he was last, right? He didn't have much. He didn't have a home to go home to, right? He was more impoverished than I. So how can I set aside my own selfish desires? How can I make a way for him? How can I love him well and be connected to him in spite of our difference? So I don't really think interpreting the scriptures is probably something that I would stand on in the moment from a New Testament or Old Testament perspective. But I do know many people that choose to do that, and so it's just that therein lies the conversation. It's like, oh wow, tell me why. What are you learning? What are you reinterpreting? So I'm curious. What are you thinking about? What scriptures maybe have you heard that don't jive? I'll use your words, that are out there.
Yeah.
Was there one that came to mind when
No, I
you
mean,
when you
look,
thought of that?
it is Pride Month. I know,
Mm,
the Testament
wow.
is not for same sex uh,
Mm,
relationships. So for me,
yep.
I think I don't know, and I don't know where you stand on the Second Amendment, but I think the letter of the an intent of the amendment
Mm.
isn't really what people are using it for today. Now, whether you agree with it or not, I think it's a different world we live in. So maybe change could be needed. So I don't know. That's one thing that sticks out in my mind. But again, I don't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah, there are about 4 or 5 wedge issues in the world. That's one of them, a
Yeah,
really, really tricky one. And for some Christians, it's not tricky at all. It's like, no, like this is what the scripture says. But I have many Christian friends that practice and they do believe that there is some room to talk about how people of different sexual preference fit in to Christianity, and so I'm not the judge nor the jury. My job is to pay close attention to loving people well and to be that guy that's inclusive in my forms of outreach, to know that folks can, the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? The Good Samaritan was the one who wasn't a Christian. He wasn't a Jew. Rather, we're no Christians at that point, right? He wasn't a Jew, but he took care of someone that was suffering. I want to be that guy. I
yeah,
want to be the guy that says, you know what? Whether they're hurting because of decisions they've made or by circumstance. And I believe that there are both, right? Because good things sometimes happen to bad people. I want to be somebody that's known as somebody that cares for people, even when it's hard. And then if people want to discuss offline some of these wedge issues that separate us, because I'm pretty sure that you and I would agree on about 98% of
I
everything.
think so too.
And the 2% that we might not agree on or we might have nuanced thoughts about, those are best done in smaller dialogues. Now, there are people that believe, no, 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 use the big pulpit, but you have never, and you follow, you've probably seen some of my social posts. I do a few from time to time. I've never made a political post. I've never posted about politics or heavy wedge issues because I want to be the unifier, not in so much that we all have to be the same, but I want to be a unifier to call people toward each other so that we can find each ways to love each other well. So it's a tricky issue that you're bringing forward there.
Well, I respect that too. I do think that tough issues need
Mm.
to be discussed from both sides. So I do think there's importance there. Brent, big supporter of the show, one of my best friends, since we're going on a tangent here, him and I disagree on a lot of things, but he's in my circle. He was best in my wedding party. And uh,
What? That's
so,
awesome. But do they need to be discussed, Matt, in the public spaces, or could we care enough about people to take the time to bring them into the private spaces? One of the books in my theological studies, in my undergrad work, my degree in theology is from Hanover College. Her name was Hannah Arendt, and Hannah talked about the public and the private. And how do we make sure that we know when to operate in each of those spheres, so that we're not beating people, not using, you know, a bully pulpit to convert people, because that doesn't work. or from my personal experience, I don't think it works very well. That probably the Holy Spirit can do anything, and I'll leave room for that. And I probably have people that'll whack me on the head because we're kind of on the fringes of this topic. But mine is, hey, you got an issue with me? Let's talk about it. Call me.
Yeah.
I'm available. Let's
I
go.
mean, we don't want any gotcha moments, but I say having it public is more of
Mm,
a conversation moving forward where we say, this is what you think, this is what I think. Let's have a
mm,
conversation here, respectful conversation, which I get it. I did ask that a little bit. What are a few wedge issues? And we're not going to talk about them. I'm curious about them, but also if
mm.
I'm someone who is on the other side of those issues and I want to be a Christian, are people accepting of that to say, hey, you can take it what you want, or is it all in or nothing? Because for me, as being Jewish and Reformed, I think, look, follow it how you want to. It's sort of guidelines. How does the community view people who want to be involved in it but have some issues with some of the stuff that's in there?
Yeah, let's use pro-life, pro-choice. And even those words, I don't know, are perfect
Yeah,
descriptors. A woman's right to choose. Like people will try to define that particular issue in different ways. And I know Christians that I believe have the veracity of being able to say, I am a Jesus follower. Somebody's going to weigh in here and go off because we even though we're on the fringes, we are touching the issues. And so while I am pro-choice, my wife, excuse me, I am pro-life. My wife is pro-choice. And so even inside my own family, like we're able to come together, and I don't love Leslie less
yeah.
because she has a different perspective on that matter. I was a little bit, when I was in the younger days, had some other perspectives. And so like I've grown and discerned and followed wise teaching and listened to a lot of great content. And I don't have the answer, and I'll never declare that I have all the answers because I don't.
But you
Far
teach,
from
right?
it.
You teach.
I do, I do. And if somebody asked me and I were called to account on that issue, I would share why I believe that pro-choice makes sense. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, my question wasn't whether or not you're gonna like give them. If you're teaching someone, can you teach them? And if they don't, if there's certain parts of it, it doesn't even have to be a wedge issue. It could just be something for their personal. Is there value to you teaching them, even though they're not going to follow everything? I guess that was my question.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know what? I'm going to teach somebody how to run a proper pass route, whether or not they actually execute that proper
Yeah,
pass route on an NFL field. Look, they need to know the right way to catch the ball and tuck it, right? Like, oh, they may never catch the dang ball. I taught them how to tuck it, but they never catch it. So the point is,
lead a
how
horse to
do
water.
come on? Yeah, let's just be generous with people. Let's teach them, our pathways, and I think we gravitate toward the leaders, right? That we find and admire that have value systems. Doesn't mean that we can't have other leaders that have different value systems. I literally just hung up the phone with a Muslim leader in California. We're in different time zones by 3 hours. He just talked about what happened at mosque, and we had complex discussions like this. That would be another wedge issues. Is there only one way to heaven?
Oh,
Pro-life, pro-choice, another. Human sexuality, another. There aren't too many more. Somebody could stand there and say, well, what about this, and this? But
no,
those are three of the biggest ones, and you could probably put in there a little inerrancy of the Bible and a few other things, but that's less divisive in public culture
yeah.
than the other three.
One of the best books I've read, my favorite books, was the book "He's Just Not That Into You," and it was written. Have you ever heard of it? You know they
No.
made it a movie. It's just about women. it's an interesting book about relationships and making excuses about why he's not into you, but at the end of the day, he's not into you. It's written from a perspective of a female kind of reading it as to why he's not into you. But as I'm reading this, I say 99% of the content in there could just be switched around and she's just not into you. And I mention this because I'm not a father. I don't believe in the scripture. I'm coming next week to the Fatherhood Festival. I'm very excited about it. What does this festival teach someone like me, again, who's not a
Mm.
parent and who's not into the religious part of it? What would you want someone like me who's going to be at this? Because I assume that I'm not going to be the only one. What does this festival mean to people like me?
Yeah, fathering in the biological sense is only a small part of what it is that we need to do to father America's future. You are going to father through mentoring, through non-biological fathering. Like, I sort of distinguish it this way. Like, anyone can father a kid, but there's only certain guys that are going to be dads or daddy. And while you may never be a biological daddy, it doesn't mean that you can't love your niece. You can't father your niece or someone else that's in your life. And so I believe it has to do with you learning how to be a better mentor, a better role model, someone that you can look up to, someone that is a man of character and honor. And I don't think it'd be a hurt for you to be down on the football field in the Mike Singletary station learning about some of those values, or in the Anthony Munoz station learning about those values, so that when you are in mentor-based settings, whether it's at the boys club in a sort of a very specific way, or whether it's at the grocery store when you see an unaccompanied minor that maybe looks lost, and you say, you know what, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to pay attention to that young person until which time they're reconnected to a caring adult. And so I don't think that we have all of the answers, but I do know what it means to be a mentor to people that aren't my biological children, and have invested countless hours in as a chaplain of a football team, or as a coach of a basketball team, and so many other contexts where mentoring comes in. So those are kind of skills that I think you'll be able to glean from the experience, and you're going to meet a lot of other amazing people that have come together that need to know you, that need to know your perspectives, who you are in the world, and what it is that you do to help make the world a better place. So I think it's going to be a very natural network that's going to be very attractional to people that have values and morals and want to do better in life. And I think you'll fit right in. So let me know after the festival what you
Yeah.
got out of it, and we'll compare notes.
Yeah, because I am not a very religious person, but I do think that this type of environment and atmosphere does intrigue me, and it is important to understand people and why they are and why they believe what they
Mm.
believe. So I think it's a very important lessons that will be learned.
Well, that's a great point, that you need to understand that this festival, by its nature, is not overtly evangelical in its nature. Let me explain how we're doing it. Friday night is the movie Underdog, which we talked about a little bit earlier, but that's Kurt Warner's movie, one of the great quarterbacks of all time. And he felt like an underdog. You know what? Sometimes I do too. And that movie doesn't bring forward just a Christian perspective. It's like, what's that underdog in us all? And how can we figure out how to believe in ourselves and belong in a community and to strive for something? So that's Friday night, June 17th. On the 18th, we're going to rotate through amazing learning stations with Anthony Munoz and Sean Alexander and Mike Singletary. And we're going to learn and grow together in 3 different rotation groups. It's going to be amazing. Lots of games, lots of fun, food. It's just a festival environment. It's going to be super cool from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. But at the end of that 5 p.m., right after the Father of the Year Awards, where we're bringing in some really special guys that have overcome a lot that we're going to honor, and we're going to have what we call overtime. And overtime is that moment where we say to people, look, you don't have to come to this, but we're going to meet down on the 50-yard line. And at the end of every NFL game, it's every single one, all 32 teams everywhere, it'd be 16 games or thereabouts each week. They meet on the 50-yard line and they have a prayer together. You know, both teams competed against each other. They knocked heads. but an organization called Athletes in Action many years ago helped to orchestrate those prayer circles. And that's an opportunity for people to come together and learn why it is that we do what we do. In other words, why does Darrin Gray? What fuels me? And faith is part of that. So you want to come learn about that with Mike Singletary and David Tyree, the helmet catch guy, and Sean Alexander from the cover of Madden. And you want to come learn about it? Great. If not, man, go get a hot dog, and I'll see you at the Jordan Davis concert. We'll learn to buy a little dirt and to settle down and have some fun with Jordan in the evening. And then the next morning, we're going to come back and have another inspirational moment at the Pro Football Hall of Fame Museum. And I'm curating something inside the museum that's going to be so remarkable. And we're so appreciative for you helping to put together the VIP tags for this event. But with Anthony Munoz and Dave Robinson, the NFL player, Sean Alexander, Dave Tyree, many others. And we're going to talk about how if you reach the pinnacle of success, you're recognized as a Hall of Famer, or you got on the cover of Madden, or you made a catch that became iconic on the side of your helmet that helped to win a Super Bowl. But when you get there, you say, you know what? Those aren't the most important things. The most important things are my values, being a good person. How is it that I do the things that help make the world a better place? And for those men that I just named there, their Christian faith. And so we're going to bring those things forward. It's going to be remarkable. That's on Sunday morning. And those tickets are still available if folks want to learn more about that at fatherhoodfestival.com.
Yeah. Brent has a good question. I want to know, you want people to bring their families, of course. Aside from being Father's Day weekend, it's good for the kids to learn, right? It's not just about fathers learning.
Yeah, that's really key learning that in traveling around the country with Tony Dungy and All Pro Dad and Mark Merrill and all the folks that helped to make All Pro Dad happen many decades ago. It was, how do you teach a father or a father figure and a child at the same time? That's actually harder than it sounds. Like, you can teach dads like a Braveheart message, like we got to get better, be more, do more. But can you teach that same message and get children what it is that they need in a lens that they can understand, so that fathers and kids can come together? So I call it the call to arms, right? It's these arms about how do we embrace young people? How do we declare that fathering does matter in America? How do we not marginalize fathers? How do we find a way to say your role matters and you do better, but do it with fathers and kids together? By the way, moms are welcome. We have a whole mom zone strategy. We got special activities that moms don't want to miss. Many of those activities will be with their children and their husbands or significant others down on the field. Some of them will be up in the press box. I've got some really cool stuff planned. But the thing I would say is, yes, like, come with your children or come with a child that you love. So in your case, you don't have a biological child. You wanted to bring a mentee with you. I call them proteges. Bring that protege, apprentice them for the day, and that work will not come back void. Because when you pour into young people over the course of a day, when you're just together, right? You're buying them a meal, you're hanging out, you're doing stuff together, you're having fun. I call it football drills and life skills. Man, you can learn a lot through that football drill, but it's not about teaching them to be a Hall of Famer, because none of them, or few of them, are going to go on to be a Hall of Famer. There's only 360 some odd of those Hall of Famers. They're more likely to become a better human being. And that's what it is that we're training up at this event.
Yeah, Brent also wants to know, what do you think has contributed to the societal marginalization of the role of fatherhood?
Yeah, man, he's a good writer, Brent. You are sharp.
He is a writer. He's a good dad, and his dad is a great dad too. So it's his mom's great too. Great family.
That's an important question, and it's a really, really hard one because I think that there are folks that would like to, because they want to celebrate, single mom. I love single moms. Single moms do an amazing job. Like, you had a single mom, right? Because your father died.
I was much older, but no, my dad was there until.
Okay.
Until
he was. Okay. So I don't want to extend that any further than need be, but I missed that point. But the point is, I think that there are some factions that want to make sure that we embrace the totality of what it means to be a parent. And sometimes they can take it to an extreme and they can begin to say, hey, that role of a father, you don't really need a father in your life. What I would say is that children do need positive male role models in their life, whether it's biological father or whether it's mentor, uh, that really does make a difference in the life of a young person. And, we can pull out some statistics another time, Brent, to sort of substantiate that case. But the Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse has a lot of data in and around that particular topic and how it is that we can make sure that dads have a prominent role in society.
But in a lot of ways, it's got to be natural and organic, right? I mean, you just throw someone in there to say, "Hey, here's your mentor and your father figure." If you don't jive, that's maybe just going to cause a bigger rift, and that causes a younger person to want to maybe act out. So,
Yeah, I call it sustained positive male role models. That's a lot of words, but the point is that you're right, because I've seen a lot of circumstances where a mentor shows up for a day and they end up actually doing more damage because they're abandoning that child who believe, like, hey, I don't matter. You can't come back again. You won't be present with me over time. So you have to talk about that up front. If you have to talk about, hey, how is it that I can help to get you connected to some long-term mentoring and fathering? But I also teach some important lessons that puts the onus on the young person to look around their ecosystem, right, and to identify people, men that they're proud of, that they believe they'd like to be more like, and then how to reach out to them. And one of the things I do believe is that there are a few men, I'm sure there are some, but there are a few men that can resist a young person coming to them saying, hey, would you be my mentor? Now, do they need some skills in order to be able to do that in a way that helps to teach things the right way? Probably. But I think that we do need to put some of the burden on the young person to have to learn how to reach up to say, hey, will you help me? And that is a
you got to
very
reach down too. You got to reach
yeah.
down too.
It is both directions. But in America, there are a lot of groups teaching the teach down. So
Right.
one of my unique messages, hey youth, because I go in a lot of juvenile correction facilities. In fact, the capstone event to the Fatherhood Festival is the juvenile detention facility 10 minutes away from the Pro Football Hall of Fame on Father's Day, where there'll be a whole lot of fatherless kids, functionally fatherless, that aren't going to have their dads come see them that day. So you know what we're going to do? You and I, you're coming with me. Let's go.
Man,
We're going to go serve in that place because we're going to father the fatherless. And what does that mean? And what does that look like? We'll put some systems in place. And I'm thrilled that we're going to have guys like Chris Draft, 11-year NFL pro, Anthony Munoz, Dean Dalton, so many other guys that have stepped up to say, I'm going to lend my name. I'm going to plug in Jim Ballard. I could go on and on for all these men that have said, you know what, I want to come help. Many of them are bringing their wives. It's going to be an amazing day. Fatherhoodfestival.com. That's where folks can learn more about it and get plugged in.
yeah, you're doing great work in this space. Who else would you recommend that people can get involved with if this is something that interests them from a mentor perspective? My sister had a little sister. I know that program is can be good, but there's some restrictions as well. And
Yeah, it's hyper local. I really believe that you've got to study the mentoring organizations in your life. There are several in the greater Indianapolis area, which is where I live, that I think are doing a phenomenal job that we need to plug into and support. And then I love it when you go volunteer with your protege, when you find ways to get into the community and go do things. You don't have to have a mentoring organization to find a young person at your church, your school. And one of the lessons that I teach is just around, do you know your children's friends? My point is, when you identify some of your children's friends that may not have a biological or functional father in their life, how do you make sure and do things together? Your child, your child, and that friend. And you can just grow and learn, and you can mentor in a triad in that case. And so there is no perfect solution. There's no one size fits all. But you know what? We're trying to do the best work that we can to step up and be the role models that we believe that we're called to be.
is there? It's hard to choose, but is something on a local level better than a national level? if
Oh
you're,
man, you're going to get me in trouble, aren't you? You're going to bring another if or them or us or them. Look, all those mentoring organizations matter, and I'm thrilled that they're working in those spaces. I think local is optimal because they know the needs of the community. And
yeah,
so if you think about it this way, there's mentoring, there's fostering, and then there's adoption. Now follow with me. Mentoring is, hey, I'm going to go enter in and try to create a sustained relationship with a young person as a coach or in a more formal way through big brothers, big sisters, something like that. Then you've got, hey, I'm willing to be a foster parent, which is a fantastic, very long-term, sustainable form of mentoring. Then it's like, no, 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 I'm going to be an adoptive parent, which ultimately I think is a beautiful way of caring for the next generation. So there's no one size fits all models, but I love looking local, finding the need, and then plugging in and saying, hey, I'm here to serve. How can I help? As opposed to going in and expecting for them to serve you in some way, just being present for local communities that are helping youth. You will find proteges. They are everywhere,
yeah.
and we need to do more to help.
Did you find any negative aspects to bringing a child in who might have someone around this that feels inadequate in a way that can't provide what say other
Mm,
families can? Is that an issue ever?
Man, you are like an investigative journalist today. Yeah, I have seen that happen before,
Yeah,
and while it's a really difficult topic, and I can be pretty vulnerable with you one on one and share with you some things that I've seen in terms of where a parent has felt overshadowed, where a biological dad who has been a rolling stone and not involved in his child education, then he shows up on graduation day. He shows up at the child's graduation, but there's been another mentor that's helped to guide that person forward. And
yeah.
so how gracious is that mentor going to be? And the answer is as gracious as he can. It depends on who he is, what his character is, what ilk he's made of. And so that's still the biological father needs to be honored. How do we care for that? But I have seen some tricky situations arise, and I think that it's an important conversation, and one that I could probably tick a lot of people off if I shared my real mind, because for me it's hurtful to the young person who then is tugged and feels the tension between where should my allegiance be, and the answer is it's not an either or
No.
thing. It's a both and
But there's a
so
lot of
that's a
people who come into the picture for the wrong reasons too, which is another, that's a whole nother
I
conversation.
I suppose so, right?
It just depends on the situation. This what depending on who I'm talking to, I like to ask this question. I think it might be pretty appropriate for you. Um, I watched. I remember watching the Mister Rogers documentaries. Have you seen them? And
It's been a few years since I saw it, but I did see it.
I I don't know if there's a better person on this earth than Mister Rogers. From what I just and but
Right?
it would shock me if Mister Rogers wasn't Mister Rogers and who he was. And
Hmm.
he's passed on. The one person that comes to mind, I'm a Gator, so Tim Tebow, like Danny Werfel, but Tim Tebow
Yeah,
is one person that if he just wasn't who he portrayed to be, I would
yeah,
be like shocked if I read something.
yeah.
Who in this world is there someone that you see that way that if you saw a headline, you'd be like, no, there's no way that's true, or you'd be very disappointed to find out that it was true.
Well, I mentioned him earlier, but just knowing Tony Dungy as well as I do, and having been around him, like I've been with him, and literally, this is not an exaggeration. Over, I kind of counted one time based on the number of events that I produced for him, which is into the hundreds, and that means that tens of thousands of people that I've been near him as they've approached him in receiving lines to have their moment with him, and I've just seen the way he's reacted to them, and he's the same. Like whether we've been with I mean, presidents of companies and very influential people in private jets, and I've had some crazy experiences with him that have been amazing, and he's the same. He's gracious, he's kind, he's loving, and yeah, he gets tired too. Like how many autographs can somebody sign? But there's a truth in who he is and how he treats people. And that's, I think, what defines who he is. And he's taught me an awful lot about what I can do and learned so much from him. And it's been an honor to be in and around him as much as I have been, as have many, many other people. But he would be one, and then many other people in and around the sport that I happen to spend a lot of time around. NFL. There's just so many good guys out there that are making a positive difference and leading with courage and honor and hope. And I'd like to think that I might be one of those people. Just that's integrity, like the veracity. Am I the same in front on the stage and backstage? Am I the same? And I want to be that guy, right? What do you do when nobody else is looking? Kind of a guy. I'm trying to be the same guy. And yeah.
Yeah, I think I had this conversation the other day. Like when people pass on,
Mm,
we don't ever say, well, this, part of my French, this guy was an asshole, right? I mean,
mm.
we just don't say that. And it's impossible for everyone to be the best and this so great. Do we not elevate the good and expose the bad enough?
I need to think about that. I think, I spend a lot of time, let's call it influencer marketing. So in fact, David Tyree, like as we speak, if this is live, and it is,
It is.
David Tyree, the helmet catch guy, who was known more by a singular catch on the side of his helmet from Eli Manning in a Super Bowl game that ultimately helped them to go on to win a Super Bowl that the Patriots would have otherwise won, and Tom would have had yet another ring. And you just go, okay, who is this guy? And he is just a God honoring, kind, loving guy. I believe he's a father of 9, if I'm not mistaken. And he's just a really great guy. But in the influencer space, like he's out right now on doing national media on behalf of the Fatherhood Festival, trying to say, you know what, fathering matters. I want to influence people toward being a better father. That work matters. That's lifting up the great in people, because every guy can be this. We can be a father or a father figure. You too, even though you don't have biological children. And so your question is,
Yeah, I'm just saying, do we elevate the good enough, and do we not expose the bad enough, or not call, because people are celebrated even though for what
yeah,
they do. The funny thing is, Tyree is who he is, regardless of whether he makes that catch or not. But his
yeah,
ability to have a platform and influence is heavily
yeah.
predicated on that catch.
Well, for sure, it did shape his public persona, and he's amazing. And I grew up in the media industry, so I'll make that confession. Back in the day, when they tossed something in your dad's front yard, and they called it a newspaper. And
Yeah.
every day your dad went out and he looked at the sports section and he interacted with the newspaper, and it helped you shape community and public opinion. But you've heard the phrase, hey, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. And I don't know that that's the case. I read the newspaper this morning. I happened to be at a Starbucks and I opened up the paper, and there was good news on the front of the paper. It was talking about the Indiana Kentucky All-Star game and just different things about that's a positive way for competition for youth to compete. And it was a very positive. I'm like, wow, this is great. It's not about violence or what happened. It was positive. So I do think I want to be a guy that lifts up the good in sports. That's kind of font work in humanity or in life. But I do think there is a tendency in our culture and probably other cultures too to want to lift up some of the things that might be unsavory, because we could gossip about that, but I don't want to be that guy.
No, I think I told you this when I met you in Chicago, that my friend Kevin and I used to get the Tuesday paper, Monday paper, and like manually score our fantasy football. That's when we started doing fantasy football. Now it's like you literally know on what play
I
if
know.
needs 11 yards for you to win. It's down to the point one, which my brother and I lost a championship once by like a 3 yard run or something in garbage time, which was that's
That ki- that kills me, when you see that happen.
yeah. It's in
Wow.
gambling too. It happens all the time. And Brent
It,
talked about a garbage field goal that if Tony would have kicked, he would have won the winning numbers. And I think he can correct me. He has won a pretty big sum in a Super Bowl numbers game before. I believe he had a pretty good year for that. But I want to tell you also another funny story. We talking about you mentioned Daddy, and my
Mm.
mom every time she leaves a voicemail still says, "Hey Matt, it's Mommy," and I'm like, yeah,
Sweet.
it's sweet, but it's like you can say Mom or I know.
Mm.
It's just funny the way, but you're
Man, you
always
got to respect that, man. You need to call her up and tell her thank you.
no, I
Like
do.
like the fact that she is intentional enough, and you might go, no, it's not intentional at all, but I'm going to choose to believe that, right? She loves you. Like you are precious to her. And so
No,
she's
we're
all
always going to be the little
their
mommy's little
precious
boy,
baby.
daddy's little boy or girl. It's
But
again,
if it bothers you, I can get you a
no,
therapist, or I can do a little counseling or client-centered therapy, and we can help you work through that. But I think on the whole, that's not a bad thing because
no,
there's
it's
often
not a bad thing at
a
all.
lot of guys that don't have that. My mom passed on during the COVID, and it was hard. It was tragic. It was awful. It was terrible. When she couldn't breathe. She her lungs were filled with fluid. It was awful, and I was present there with her as that was going down. And then he put her in the hospital in 2 weeks.
It's terrible.
That 2 weeks that I wasn't able to physically be with her, and my last conversation with her was via a FaceTime video. And you know what I did? I read Where the Wild Things Were with her, to her, as she read to me when I was a boy. And in the moment, right, because she was my mommy, I'm like just trying to create some sort of a moment to say, you know what, you will always be my mommy, and I miss her so. And so anyway, we'll just trust the spirit to say that moms matter too, and we were lucky to have them in our lives, and I'm glad that you still have yours.
Yeah, well, I think sorry that you had to go through that with your mom. My dad actually June 15th is going to be 17 years, so it's right. It happened right around Father's Day when he passed. He had pancreatic cancer. I flew up when my family said you got to come up, and I think and I'm just assuming based on what I know about you, that your mom really knew where she stood in your life and the relationship you had, which does give you a lot of comfort when something like that happens. And I say it all the time. I do the same post every June 15th. Like, why do we wait for something bad happen to tell the people how we feel about
That's really good. You want to come teach that lesson at the Fatherhood Festival?
it? I'm happy to
Like,
teach any lesson you need me to
yeah,
teach.
put your hand on somebody's shoulder that's going to need to hear that, whether it's on the main stage or whether it's in the dad zone, or what a dad's standing on an inflatable, and we're just reminding each other,
Yeah,
don't miss the moment. Like,
yeah,
we don't have to have signature moments all the time. I say it this way, like, quality moments happen in quantity time. And that my point is aligned with yours there. Like, how do we make sure that we're with rapidity? Every time your mom calls you, she's like, "Hey, it's Mommy," and whether that annoys you a little,
I
is
think
what
it's
it is,
funny more than annoying, but
right?
yeah,
But we gotta let people know that they matter, that they care, and continue to find ways to lift up what's right, good, and true. Because family really is the first institution. I believe that family is that thing that is just so critical. And while there's a lot of brokenness, there's a lot of things that aren't perfect in this world. When you have a strong family, biological or otherwise, the chance of that child ending up with better outcomes skyrockets. I saw a statistic. It was 88% was the most recent statistic I saw, that children are 88% more likely to end up without all these isms. And they quoted all these isms. And of course, no statistic is perfect, and every statistic probably misrepresents to some, but let's just say a lot better off because there is a strong family intact. And so that's kind of where I'm coming
I,
from.
I heard that 62% of all statistics are made up,
Sure.
including
Let's
that,
go with that.
including that one.
Yeah,
uh,
well, but it broke down. What it did was it was actually, it only takes 396 verified responses to
right.
move to a 2% margin of error, and I know I know data. We talked about analytics in
Yeah.
sports earlier. I get analytics, but the point is still true. It's directional. And directionally, I guarantee you from the trauma that I've seen in broken communities where gangs and guns are the order of the day, and where fathering is happening or parenting is happening inside of a gang-based context, those kids are not ending up in good places, jails, institutions, and death.
Yeah.
And so how do we give them another choice? That's by making sure there are plenty
I
of
believe
mentor.
that fully. The last thing I'll say about
Yep.
parenting and fatherhood is that you're not, I don't owe anything to my family to be a good son or father or brother. So it's like you, that didn't come out right. You don't owe your family anything. Because there's lots that aren't, and you have to work at it. You're not just family and it's all good because you're related. I mean, there's plenty of people who don't talk to their fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, brothers. So it takes a lot of work with any relationship to make it right.
Takes a lot of work. It's a
Yeah.
daily family is a daily game.
We're going to let you out of here with the same question we let everyone out of the Wolff Den with. You have 24 hours to spend with anyone in the world. I'm going to mess you up on your other answer because they have to be alive and you can't be related to them. Who's it going to be and what are you guys doing?
Man, that's a deep.
Be alive, remember. So you can't hang out with Jesus.
That would be fun, but I've got that one packed away for
Yeah.
eternity, so I'm
Another
good on
day.
that one, right? But in the moment, it'd probably be my grandfather.
Someone you're not related to, someone you've never met, someone that's alive.
Somebody out there in the big world.
Yeah.
Uh, Man, maybe Crosby, Crosby, Stills,
Yeah.
and Nash. Like, if I could go hang out with Crosby for a day, that'd be pretty cool. I'd
Gee.
like to know what it was like to live in the Valley during that creative period when Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and enter Elton John, like all these creative forces that were all sort of kind of trying to create a soulful musical expression to get our country moving together, and I saw it working. It looked like it was actually there was a soulful connection that our society seems to not have as much right now. So I think that would be awesome to spend the day with David Crosby.
Beautiful.
Well,
He's on the list. That's a great choice. Fatherhoodfestival.com next weekend or next week. It starts 17th to the 19th at the Hall of Fame Village in Canton, Ohio. I will be there. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great event. And if you know anyone who doesn't have plans, is close enough where they can make it, check out fatherhoodfestival.com. Get some tickets. We'll see you there. We'll get you a really sweet badge for the Jordan Davis concert and for
that's right.
the Sunday brunch and everything. Thanks for your time, and we'll report on everything, and we'll keep this conversation moving forward, spreading the good word.
I'd love that.
All right. Thanks,
Thank,
Darrin.
thank you, Matt.
Talk to everyone later. Have a great night.